Hello agents, welcome back to another Division 2 video. So, in today's video, I will be showing you guys two incredibly powerful PvE builds. After messing around with various setups, I discovered two high damage DPS builds that are extremely viable and might actually be the best solo PvE builds in the Division 2. These builds will work great for any content in the game, whether that be raids, bounties, the dark zone, legendary missions, you name it. You can solo legendary missions with both of these builds quite easily if you have the patience, and if you can solo legendary missions, you can basically solo any content in the game. But anyway, this first build will make legendary missions look like a joke. Just take a look at this insane amount of damage. Crazy, right? Well, this is a Striker build set up, and we all know that Striker is easily the most powerful gear set in the game, right? Well, I beg to differ because this second build that I will be showing you may have Striker beat by a long shot. And this is because this second build will deal out almost the same amount of damage as Striker while having nearly double the amount of armor. So hitting damn near as hard as Striker with a little over 3 million armor sounds too good to be true, right? Well, it's true, and before we get into that second build, I first want to show you guys this new high damage Striker build that I came across recently. And if you guys love high damage DPS builds and don't mind having a scope on your weapon, then you may find this build extremely viable. And to be honest, I prefer not having a telescope on my weapon either, but this build is super fun to use, so I'd love for you guys to give this build a try and let me know how it works for you in the comment section. But I'm sure you guys will love it. The only real downside of this build is the lack of survivability. It's almost non-existent, but the damage out really makes up for it. So check out this solo gameplay footage of the Roosevelt Island legendary mission, then I'll go over the breakdown of the build. Now, I won't be showing you guys the full run, but just enough for you to see how great this build performs. One thing to note, guys, is that with legendary missions, patience is key, right? And maintaining a safe distance from the NPCs while dealing out a ton of raw weapon damage is what makes this build so great. So it's best to keep your distance and allow the NPCs to advance towards you as you take them out. Also, since this build has very little survivability, having the gunner specialization will help because of the armor on kill bonus, and since you can expect to eliminate the NPCs fairly quickly, this armor on kill bonus will stack up pretty quickly. The gun I'm using is the Carbine 7. This gun is extremely accurate, has very good stability, and is an overall well-rounded weapon, making it a great choice for long-range combat. The Talent Ranger I found works the best. I was using In Sync before though, but after trying Ranger, I'm definitely hitting harder. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that. So if you decide you would rather use another weapon for this setup, just keep in mind that accuracy and stability will be important since we will be using a scope. Some of you might have guessed it, but I'm using the chest piece talent Focus. This is the reason for the scope on the gun I'm using. You will gain 5% weapon damage for each second you are aiming while scoped with an 8 times or higher magnification scope. This stacks up to 50% weapon damage, which is really nice. The talent Focus is a really nice talent that I don't see very many players using, and it's extremely viable with long-range DPS builds. With the Talent Ranger on the Carbine 7 further increasing weapon damage by 2% for every 5 meters, we are away from the enemy. So again, you want to go with Gunner for this build setup, right? Mainly for the passive talent, Incessant. This will give you 10% armor on each enemy kill when fully maxed out. You may also use Banshee Pulse as well to crowd control the enemies, but I find Decoy works better for builds like this since this build does lack quite a bit of survivability. For the Carbine 7 Assault Rifle, 12% extra weapon damage from Expertise, 15% assault rifle damage, 21% health damage, and 10% damage to target out of cover. The Ranger talent on this weapon will increase your weapon damage even further by 2% for every 5 meters you are from the enemy. So this talent works well with the Focus talent on the Fenris chest piece. Having one piece of Fenris will also be adding 10% assault rifle damage, with maxed out 15% weapon damage, 12% critical hit damage, 6% critical hit chance, and a 12% critical hit damage mod. The American Jackal Coyote Mask. This exotic mask is amazing and will give you critical hit damage and chance bonuses the further you are away from a target. with 15% weapon damage, 12% armor, 6% critical hit chance, 12% critical hit damage, and a 12% critical hit damage mod. For the striker bag, 15% weapon damage, 12% critical hit damage, and a 12% critical hit damage mod. And for the gloves, having 2 pieces of striker will give you 15% weapon handling, with 15% weapon damage, 12% armor from the expertise level, and 12% critical hit damage. And just a quick thing I'll note here, guys. Don't bother leveling the expertise on your gear unless you have extra materials. Don't get me wrong though, it helps overall, but it's more impactful upgrading your weapons first. Just thought I'd mention that. But anyway, for the striker knee pads, we have 170k maxed out armor, 12% armor from the expertise bonus, and 6% critical hit chance, and having 3 pieces will unlock 15% rate of fire. Last but not least is the striker holster, with maxed rolled armor, 12% armor from expertise, and 6% critical hit chance. Having a 4-piece set of striker will unlock the striker's gamble talent, which will increase your weapon damage by 0.65% with each weapon hit, stacking up to 100 times. However, 1 stack is lost per second between 0 to 50. For the skills, I highly recommend you use the Crusader Ballistic Shield since this build does lack survivability, and having this shield equipped will only help. Decoy will work great for a secondary skill, as it will help divert attention away from you for a brief moment, giving you time to reposition or heal. Also, for the secondary weapon, you can use whatever you like. I'm using the Scorpio because it's great with crowd control and stunning the enemies if they get too close. For the stats, 44% critical hit chance and 129% critical hit damage on the Carbine 7. Okay guys, this next build is truly one of the best solo PvE builds that I've recently come across. This build uses the Heartbreaker gear set. For those of you who don't know, the Heartbreaker set will increase your bonus armor and weapon damage by 1%, reaching up to 50% stacks. And in addition to this, the Heartbreaker vest comes with a passive talent called Max BPM. This talent will increase max stacks from 50 to 100, giving you more bonus armor and weapon damage. This can be monitored by a heart-shaped icon under your status bar. Having roughly 3 million armor with full Heartbreaker stacks while still dealing out almost the same amount of damage as Striker is unbelievable. This is a very well-rounded build, and using the ACS-12 shotgun as your secondary is a great way to build up your Heartbreaker stacks. For the specialization, I recommend going with Gunner for the armor on kill. For the primary weapon, I'm using the St. Elmo's Engine Exotic Assault Rifle with 22% weapon damage from the Expertise bonus, 15% assault rifle damage, 21% health damage, and 10% damage to targets out of cover. The damage to target out of cover is a really nice attribute to stack damage with, and having the Catharsis mask with this build increases its survivability as well as weapon damage. This is because of the talent Vicious Cycle. Taking damage builds stacks to a cap of 30. Each stack grants 1% weapon damage. However, taking damage at max stacks triggers a purge, removing all stacks and status effects, and dropping a healing cloud which restores 5% of max armor for 10 seconds to you and all allies in the cloud. So having this mask will not only benefit you with weapon damage, but also by providing healing. For the backpack, I'm using a Seska bag rolled with weapon damage and crits. The talent Vigilance increases weapon damage by 25%. Taking damage, however, disables this buff for 4 seconds. One thing to note is that by having the Crusader Ballistic Shield with this build, you will find that the Vigilance talent won't be disabled too often, as your shield will protect you from incoming damage. This will allow you to maintain a decent damage output with an extra layer of protection. For the Heartbreaker holster, max rolled armor and 8.4% critical hit damage. And for the gloves, about 74k armor, which is extremely low. I need to optimize that. But anyway, 6% critical hit chance. For the knee pads, 117,000 armor and 10% critical hit damage. Having 2 pieces of Heartbreaker gives 15% assault rifle damage and 15% LMG damage, while 4 pieces unlock the talent Heartstopper. Headshots apply pulse to an enemy for 5 seconds. Weapon hits on pulsed enemies add a stack of 1% bonus armor and 1% weapon damage to pulsed enemies up to a max of 50 stacks. Just take a look at how fast using the ACS-12 shotgun builds up stacks. Once you get your stacks up and switch to your primary weapon, you will be dealing out way more damage. But even without any stacks, this build still does a great amount of damage. So for the stats, 56% critical hit chance and 126.6% critical hit damage on the Elmo. So that will do it for today's video. This is Prajna. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think of these two builds. Keep it cool, keep it classy. Peace out.